All right, thanks, Switz, the great. I love the vibes. Great segue into a panel or fireside chat, I should say, that I've been looking forward to since the minute we got in touch. Limewire, a peer-to-peer sensation reborn in Web3, and I've got my guest here, Marcus Feistl, the COO at Limewire. Marcus, thank you for being here.
Hi, Mitchell. Nice to meet you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, so we don't have too much time, so I'm going to dive headlong into this. I've confessed this already on Twitter, but I was a Limewire user back in the day. I've been paying my penance back to artists ever since. But I think it's clear that Limewire played an important role in the evolution of music consumption, and it's great to see this brand sort of being reborn. And I want to hear a little bit about how you guys are approaching this. And but let's start with you first. Like, how did you get into this world? What's it like at Limewire? Brand new shop. What's going on?
Sure. Let me start first with like a brief background about myself and what I'm doing. So I got into touch with like the crypto space in general, I would say in probably like 2017 around-ish. Was founding my own fintech startup back in the day in London, running that for 2 years, and pretty much in the midst of the bull run in 2017. Also obviously burned my fingers quite hard with dropping prices right after. So really the full experience, but was completely hooked back in at that time already. But was then working for the joint Bitpanda, which is like the European crypto exchange, pretty big one here in Europe. I was heading the German-speaking markets, so Germany, Austria, and Switzerland. And then this amazing opportunity came across with Limewire and connecting pretty much the music world and everything that goes around in this very emotional and like feelings-driven world of the music space, and connected with the Web3 crypto space, building an NFT marketplace. So that's pretty much the long story short. Now in charge of operations here at Limewire, so pretty much doing everything around getting artists onboarded on the platform, doing the curation of the content, customer support, partnerships. So that's really my bread and butter every day here at Limewire.
Yeah, let's dive into that a little bit. I'm curious, I think some folks have definitely seen Limewire's moving back into this space, or moving into the Web3 space for the first time, I should say. And I'm curious, what does that mean to you guys? What is that? I mean, I've heard NFT marketplace, like, is there streaming involved? Like, what exactly will your customers experience or your artists sort of interact with?
Yeah, very good question. So, I mean, let's maybe start there with the intention itself to bring that brand and the nostalgia around the brand back. I think there's so many people, and it's also the feedback that we are getting, especially in like our age group roughly, and also lots of the artists are feedbacking that to us, that Limewire has really been like the first platform that they really got into touch with music, right? We had a couple of artists that even told us that this is how they got close to the industry and even started their music career, just because it gave them so much access to music. So everybody's still very nostalgic, and it feels a lot about the brand. And the whole idea that we had, or that our founders Paul and Julian pretty much had, was to take that mainstream brand and now use it to bring it into the Web3 space and bring the whole NFT and digital collectibles industry towards the mainstream as well. Because I think the key problem that you see today, also in the NFT music space, is it's very niche still. It's very focused towards a crypto community. It's quite hard in my opinion, for the average fan of an artist to grasp how to connect your wallet. They often do not even know what it is, don't own cryptocurrency, so it's really hard to on-ramp actually, and we are trying to take that completely away. So the whole idea is really taking, with a mainstream brand that is still well known in the space, to take the NFT space and industry as such also to the mainstream. Touching on the second part of your question, so what can users expect? We are really focusing a lot on digital collectibles with exclusive content. So the artists that we, especially for the launch, but also ongoing, we are focusing on content that is really exclusive to the platform. So nothing that has been released on a Spotify or Apple Music already. And it's also always combined with some sort of utility or unlockable content, how we call it. So not just a simple JPEG and repackaging it as an NFT. I think those times are pretty much over after the hype of last year and early this year. I think now we really gotta make the next step and move towards actual benefits and utility of NFTs. So that's what we are focusing on.
Good. I'm glad to hear it. I think I know I can probably speak for some others that are in the audience today that, Limewire, something that it has always done well is help with that discoverability aspect, and it was always easy to use. And I think that's a big part of why it took off. And so I'm glad to see that legacy piece is going to kind of lead the way for the Web3 experience, because I totally agree. I think there's a lot of fragmentation, there's usability, kind of new paradigms people have to learn. And then on top of that, I don't think that we've made things particularly easy either with the UI and UX patterns that have sort of emerged. But I do see them getting better every day. What would you say, if someone's got experience with like an OpenSea or a Gamma.io and sort of a marketplace experience along those lines? I know those two are a little bit different, but how would that compare or contrast maybe with what you guys are building at Limewire?
I mean, the key focus, and I think what will drive people to the platform, is actually the content. So that's really the one box you got to tick. It has to be good content. It has to be packaged in a way that it's perceived valuable for NFT buyers, for collectors, because otherwise there's no actual reason, right? We also try to focus on long-term value, so really utility that can be used in a longer format. Also for obviously the fact that NFT holders can trade their NFTs on a marketplace and not just buy it after the initial drop and then the prices are pretty much going down because the utility isn't really there. So even for the crypto and NFT natives that are used to an OpenSea interface and everything, I think the number one thing that will drive them there is a very well curated marketplace. And everything that comes thereafter is pretty much the bridge we try to build between the Web 2, and everybody knows about the simple interfaces and UI UX that we like in general in the web already fixed pretty much in a well way that are working perfectly, and bridge that towards the Web 3 world as well. So we will accept cryptocurrencies. You can easily pay with cryptocurrency on your NFTs. But we also accept credit card payments, and a bit further down the road after the launch, we also integrate bank transfers. So really have a super easy on and off ramp for depending on whatever background you have. So for an OpenSea user, it would probably be paying in Ethereum. That's completely fine. And for someone who is just the average fan of an artist, he can also just pay by credit card.
That's great. I think a lot of there have been like purists that are like, oh no, we need to pay in crypto. But opening up this to a broader audience, I think, is how we all win. So I'm loving that people are embracing that, and glad to hear you guys are as well. We've talked a lot about utility throughout the day, and I think rightfully so. I'm curious if Limewire, you said it's extremely curated for the launch and going forward. So I'm curious if you're selecting for artists that are delivering a particular type of utility that matches the platform's capabilities, or put another way, what are some of the artists you're working with planning to do with their utility that you're excited about?
That is, so I think the most exciting part about it is that it really depends on the artist. So it's very individual, and I think that's actually a cool thing, because that's pretty much the next step the whole industry is moving towards, in my opinion. We just got to figure out along the way and experiment what are the benefits and utility types that actually work. It might also be highly different depending on audience. So I'm pretty sure certain artists or certain genres might have different utility types than others. But what's for sure, in my opinion, is that this, like, just having a big name or just dropping a certain simple file as an NFT and putting it on a blockchain, that's probably not going to win the game in the long run. And that's also we have seen it. It's cool that we had this hype, but I think now it's going towards an actual benefit kind of model. In terms of the artists we are working with, that really highly varies, and we are quite flexible in terms of what we can offer on the platform. So usually it's a package of at least one or two exclusive content types. That can be a music file, can be an unreleased demo, a new album. We even have some artists which are dropping an entire album on Limewire with like a limited edition collection. And then usually there's always something like real life experience, perks around tickets to the entire, for the next tour they are doing, listening in sessions into their studio when they're recording something, meet and greet sessions. So it can really vary highly and depends a lot on what the artist wants to offer, and also what they think their fan base perceive as valuable. And I think that's the fun bit, also where we iterate a lot with artists, just to figure out what works for them and just test out together with the community.
Got it. I'm curious then, it sounds like you're probably building just as many tools for the artists to deliver utility through Limewire as you are for the users to actually experience it. Is that true? Or like kind of what's the sort of percentage focus as far as like the consumer experience versus the tools you're building for artists?
So obviously you got to match both sides. That's clear. That's I wouldn't really say we're focusing on one side more than the other. I think what we managed so far is really nail it down in a very simple way, so that even for an artist onboarding on a platform, if you do a self onboarding, it's so straightforward, and packaging it with the suggestions we are making, it's a relatively, in my opinion, relatively simple UI, and the same counts for the users. So you just have to comprehend first, second, what it is about, what is it I'm looking at, what's the utility behind it, how can I actually access and use it, and that's pretty much what we are focusing on. But anything that can be shared in a digital format, that's something we can support easily. So there's no difficulty in providing that.
Got it. Okay, I'm going to shift topics just a little bit. We talked a little bit before we jumped on air that Limewire, I think, it shut down officially in 2011, and now it's a whole new team, I believe. Could you talk a little bit about what that process was like and how you're building a new team and like what happened maybe in the interim period between what we knew as Limewire and then sort of the people that are in place today?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So yeah, as you just said, in 2011, like the peer-to-peer lending platform and the entity, they pretty much shut down. But what was still going on, quite interestingly, was a lot of social media engagement. Still, I think dozens of people still tweeting about Limewire in the past 10, 12 years, even though the platform didn't even exist anymore, which is really super interesting, I think. And that was like the whole intention behind acquiring the domain, the social media accounts, and the brand assets around it, and just revamping that. So now it's really a completely new entity with a new team, new ownership, and obviously also a new project. So the platform will obviously be, again, very closely associated with music. So the same industry roughly, but the approach is a very different one, I would say. Yeah, and that was the whole intention behind it. Took quite some time to get all the assets together. It was really scattered along amongst different people, but we managed to do so, and it has really paid off so far. So I think we are really passionate about it because everybody pretty much in the team has been a Limewire user back in the day, and the same counts for our artists that we are working with. Everybody's really pretty hyped by the brand that brings so much nostalgia and emotions with it.
Yeah, that's great. I'm curious if, as you're going through that process, if you identified anything really specific. What is it about the Limewire brand? Like, I'm trying to think for myself even, like, what is it that has been like so embedded and is so sticky about it? And how have you guys thought about making sure you maintain that?
I think actually, like, my assumption is it's just music is just such an emotional topic, and everybody associates a certain feeling with it. And Limewire was just one of the platforms exactly for that generation that is now also tapping into the crypto community and into the Web3 world. That is just a perfect overlap. So everybody that back in the days in their, I would say in their teenage years, started downloading music on Limewire is pretty much the same target audience now for the Web3 world, for like crypto users on all those exchanges looking into NFT platforms. So just from an age group and a user persona perspective, I think it's a perfect overlap. And also back in the day, those were the first ones that really pushed the peer-to-peer principle and the logic behind it. So they were already pretty much, I would say, the digital natives that were quite advanced and the early adopters. And the same counts for the audience now in the Web3 and NFT space. So I think it's just a natural overlap, which so far really paid off. We can't complain on that front. The community is really growing quickly. So yeah, let's hope it continues like this. Yeah. It's
been hard to keep up with your Discord. I've got so many going on, but it does seem like you have a wonderful and engaged community. It's exciting to see. I think that's really, for me, probably if I had to boil it down, I think I agree in that the number one thing for Limewire is it looked different then, but it's that same element of community, right? Like LimeWire is inherently a peer-to-peer platform. And I think a lot of the paradigms in Web3 are kind of the next evolution of that, and just different ways for people to connect one-to-one or more directly with a music or artist that they're, you know, passionate about. So very cool. I love that you guys are rebooting it. You've got a launch coming up fairly soon, as I understand your roadmap. What should people look forward to? Is this a staged launch, or is it sort of like on that day there's going to be everything? Walk us through what we might see.
Yeah. So again, like highly curated platform. We're already working with quite a list of artists. So
can you share any today, or is that all secret?
We actually gonna announce it pretty soonish. Can't share it today, unfortunately, but yeah, it won't take long. If you join our Discord community, you will get the information firsthand. So yeah, that's gonna be announced fairly quickly, actually. But what I can say already is we are working with quite a range of from really big headliners to emerging artists. Obviously, wanna give both sides the spotlight, not only the big artists that are pretty much in the spotlight already. But we are working with around 30 really larger ones, headline artists, which we will release over the next months. So really scattered around the next months and not drop all of them at the same time. And then the same counts for our smaller and emerging artists, where we just selected the top 100 that we want to work with as part of our wait list that we had. And as I just said, really working on giving them a chance to also shine on the Limewire platform and give them a chance to engage with the community as such. That's really the idea behind it. So at launch, we will really have, I think, a pretty good selection of artists. Launch with a handful of larger ones, headline artists, but also give smaller ones the opportunity to shine at that point in time already.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think every platform can benefit from the balance of course, you get the headliners, you get the eyeballs, but then that becomes a discovery mechanism by which other smaller artists can sort of get exposure as well. I know back in the day, even on LimeWire, I discovered several artists that I still like because they would name themselves after more popular artists in the metadata, and you'd think you were downloading the new popular song, but it was actually a very hustler music artist being tricky there. So that's funny to see sort of a new incarnation of that too. Okay, we don't have too much time left, but I do want to kind of, you come from crypto, so you really understand the Web3 space, and I think it's great that Limewire has someone like you, and there's a lot of great companies on the schedule today where it seems very well balanced between folks from the music world, folks from the crypto or Web3 or blockchain world, whatever you want to call it, and making sure that that artist and that user sort of is always considered throughout. And I think that's something that's maybe been missing a little bit in crypto in general. And so seeing these concrete use cases emerge in for music is really exciting. I want to go to you with the question of sort of what's of all the things that Web3 includes or represents, what are you most excited about personally? Doesn't necessarily have to be in the context of Limewire, but just sort of paradigms and principles you're looking forward to the most, or new products you're looking forward to the most.
Yeah. That's a really good question, actually. I mean, what really excites me, but also because there's so many different applications for it, sounds a bit cliche now probably for the Web3 space, but it's really that paradigm around ownership that's really changing in so many aspects in the industry. And same counts for especially the music industry, where it's really interesting that you are not only listening to the song and just a passive consumer, but you can actually be someone who is owning a piece of it, or be someone who is actually, it makes you feel completely a lot more engaged. That's my feeling. If you own a piece of it, you just have one of the limited editions. That's much more of a fan feeling, much more something you can be excited about than just opening your streaming platform and clicking on randomized choice, and that's about it. Yeah, you just get whatever the algorithm suggests to you. So obviously, we probably still need those solutions. I'm not saying we are aiming to become a competitor of the big streaming platforms. It's probably not the case. But I think there's just so much more. When I remember back in the days when I bought the few CDs before I discovered Limewire for downloading music, That was just a super interesting discovery rather than because you just go to the store and you wanted to have one of those CDs, right? Mm-hmm. You're not buying 20 and listening into all of them. And I think that's something in the digital space that's really changing the game a lot, and makes it much more exciting for me to participate.
Yeah. I think things like Limewire and Napster really set the stage in a lot of ways for, individual tracks like we're seeing released on NFTs these days. Sound XYZ is always doing great drops. Even Royal is doing individual drops. And so like this notion that the person can pick and choose individual tracks, I think is something that was born out of that, and is good. It's also great to see people do albums, but anyway, we're close on time here. I was just going to share. I agree with you. I think that's one of the great parts of Web3, and I also think for me personally, one of the things I'm most excited about is the prospect that artists will be able to establish more creative freedom, potentially by just being more financially independent earlier on and being able to own their audience and connect with them. And sort of, I'm very curious to see the downstream impact of like complete creativity, right? You're really only beholden to this community of people that already love for your work versus maybe a label or other bigger organizations. I think we'll see that play out over time. But really quick before we go, what are you listening to right now?
That's a tough question. Depends a lot on the mood, to be fully honest. Can range a lot. I would say during work, I'm the typical EDM guy, just listening in, being in the zone. But I'm still very hyped. It's also still since back in the days when I used Limewire to download music by the 90s hip hop classics. That's something that's really stuck with me since then.
We'll have to share playlists at some point, but I got to let you go for now. Marcus, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to the Limewire team as well. Have a good one.
Thank you guys. Bye-bye. Have a good one.